All right. Aloha and welcome everyone to the Fit2Fat2Fit Experience Podcast. It's me, your host, Drew Manning, once again. Really appreciate you guys being here for another awesome episode on the podcast. And I appreciate all your support throughout the years. I've been doing this podcast for, how many years now? Almost 9 years, I think, or almost 10. Jeez, man, that's crazy. Thank you guys so much for the support. I'm really grateful for all the support throughout the years. Today we have a great episode with Dr. Joy Kong. She's an author, educator, stem cell specialist, entrepreneur, and podcast host. She's a UCLA trained, triple board certified physician um, in American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology, American Board of Addiction Medicine, and American Board of Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine. She's also the author of a book that is really interesting. We talk about in the first part of the podcast called Tiger of Beijing. It's basically her story of growing up in communist China and how much the Chinese government had control over students' ambitions to study abroad. And basically, she doesn't give all the details away, but she talks about her journey to San Francisco, California, and a very interesting, brave, courageous kind of story of her leaving China to come over here to study and become a doctor. And then we get into some treatments that she offers at her clinic called Chara Health USA, which is a cutting edge anti aging clinic in Los Angeles that focuses on both recovery from chronic illness and wellness and longevity. We talk about ketamine therapy. So, this is a treatment for people who struggle with depression. And she talks about the benefits and the risks of using ketamine. And then we get into stem cell therapy as well. So, for anyone that's interested in stem cell therapy, you want to learn about stem cell therapy, this is the episode for you. We talk about myths. We talk about stem cells here in the United States versus abroad and what the difference is. She dives into the science behind that. It's a great, well rounded episode. And I'm really excited to introduce you guys to her because she's got a great story. Before we jump into the podcast, though, a couple quick announcements. One is there are still a few spots left for my Conscious Fitness Retreat, which is in February 2025. The exact dates are February 10th through the 15th. So if you want to spend a week out here in Hawaii with me and my coaches, where we will put you through a week-long journey of becoming the best version of yourself. And that's what conscious fitness is about. So there will be physical challenges that we'll do during the week, like workouts and hiking and going to some awesome beaches. But then on top of that, we have things like meditation and breath work that are life changing. And the whole concept is designed to help you break free from patterns or behaviors that have been holding you back. So if you struggle with things like emotional eating or self sabotage or addictive behaviors and you want to learn how to overcome that, this is the retreat for you. We also, talk about nutrition and exercises and supplementation as well to become the best version of you physically. And it's a great, small, intimate experience, 10 to 15 people usually. And there's still a few spots left. If you're interested, all you have to do is go to consciousfitnessretreat.com. I know if you can't spell that, just go to the show notes and click on the link. It's a little bit easier, but consciousfitnessretreat.com. And what you'll do is you'll fill out an application. I'll reply to you via email. We'll set up a time to jump on a Zoom call, you and me, one-on-one, to talk about this to see if it's a good fit. And then we'll go from there. And hopefully you can join us in February of 2025. On top of that, if the retreat isn't for you, I offer Conscious Fitness group coaching, which is a monthly membership where you and a group of people that are on the same journey, live all over the world, basically get the curriculum that you would get at the retreat, but more in a monthly basis where you kind of you do the challenges as a team, as a community in a private WhatsApp group. We still do monthly breathwork sessions. We read a different book each month. We focus on different themes and challenges, physical challenges and mindset challenges to, once again, help you become the best version of yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I would love to have you join our community. I'll put a link in the show notes because the link is kind of long. If you're interested in that, you can either pay for a monthly membership or an annual membership if you want to save some money. But I would love to have you join us if you're interested in this more holistic, well-rounded, conscious fitness approach, which is a new age way of doing health and fitness instead of your traditional, macros and calories and lifting and weight loss. All that stuff is included, but we get it more into the mindset of why you are the way you are and peeling back the layers to figure out, why you struggle with consistency and why you struggle with self-sabotage and why you struggle with self-worth and it's a life-changing experience if you feel called to do it. Click on the link in the show notes. Would love to have you. And with that, let's go hang out with Dr. Joy Kong. All right, Dr. Joy Kong, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Drew. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm happy to have you on. I'm excited to dive into your story a little bit, if that's okay. First of all, I want to introduce you to my audience and kind of allow my audience to get to know you. I know you grew up in China for the first 20 years of your life. I'm very curious about what that was like for you and how that shaped you into the person you are today. So, if you don't mind talking about what it was like growing up in China and how that influenced you into the line of work that you're in now.
Yeah, well, now I am a doctor specializing in stem cell therapy, regenerative medicine, anti-aging. So that's my field, which is in a sense bucking the system of the traditional medical practice.
Yeah.
So that is not that different from the way I felt when I was growing up because I was always bucking the system.
Okay.
Since I was in kindergarten, I was kicked out of the dance group 3 times because I was lacking discipline. I just always had my own idea of how things should
Yeah.
be done. And if I saw that there's a rule, and if the rule did not make sense, I just disregard it because who made up that rule? If it's not making sense, then it's not my rule. So
Yeah.
that did not work very well in a place, a very conformist society. Like China. So I was always the rebel, always a little bit in trouble. All the kids that you get into the young pioneer. No, you start with the young pioneer. So from age 7 to 14, and age 14 to 18 is the young league. And then after
Okay.
18, then you can join the Chinese Communist Party. So that's a pathway. So I was
Mm,
always very much behind, like the last one to join the party, because I was always, my discipline was not good, and the authorities didn't really want me to be too advanced, into the next level. So I was always the last one to join these groups.
mm.
So I always had my own ideas, and my friends were always, they're like, Joy, you're so unique. You're so what do they say? You're so, yeah, you just do whatever you want. Like, to them is like, Jesus, how can you do that?
Yeah.
You just did it. You did whatever you wanted. So that was kind of me.
Mm,
Um, I did not want to be confined. And that same
mm.
dynamic was with my parents, because when I
Okay.
was a little kid, I would do things that were not considered the right thing to do, like throwing somebody's toy down a well. And that was a very bad thing to do. And my
Okay.
parents would scold me,
Mm,
and then I would talk back. So I did not like
mm.
the way they were talking to me. So I talked back, and then they get really angry, to the point where we came to a head, and they would hit me. So they hit
Wow.
me, I don't know how many times, how many hundreds of times. So that
Yeah.
was I talked about in my book that when they were hitting me, they wanted to basically subdue my will. They wanted me to
Yes.
say I'm wrong. So while they
Yep.
were hitting me, they said, say you're wrong. And then I was screaming at the top of my lungs, saying, not wrong. And then they would keep hitting me, waiting for me to
Wow.
say, okay, I'm wrong. And I just made up in my mind, thought, well, you know what? This is all about my dignity now. It's not about anything else. So if you want to take my dignity away, I would rather die than doing that. Somehow
Wow.
that's more important to me. So that's okay. So I'll just keep saying, not wrong. Either you kill me or you stop. So they usually
Wow.
stop. So that was kind of a little snippet of my
Mm.
growing up. But I loved school. I loved learning. I thought going to school
Huh.
was super fun. I love all the classes. And I did fine in school, but my discipline was always a problem.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm very curious about that because I feel like a lot of us, all of us are products of our environment. We've been domesticated in one way, shape, or form, and a lot of us fall in line because we don't want punishments, we don't want discipline, we don't want to be spanked, right? So we kind of conform to whatever the conditioning is or the programming is, and that's really remarkable that you, all the way over in China, were able to kind of like go against the grain, if you will, and survive it, and kind of create your own path, which I think a lot of young kids are really scared to do that because we don't want to disappoint our parents. So I'm curious to know, like, as went through school, what did you gravitate towards as far as like passions or something that interested you when you were learning over there? Did you know you want to become a doctor, or how did that happen?
Well, what I know is that I hated politics. So they had us learn all these, rote learning all these policies and how much you should love your party and your country and all these
Mm,
just, very dry. But what I really enjoyed was things like physics and math. I thought those were really fun. Biology was fantastic because you get to peek into the mechanisms of life. So not
yeah.
just animals, but plants. And I found that fascinating. I liked literature, like poems and good writing. I find language very enjoyable, really just fulfilling for the brain in a sense.
Hmm.
So I think there are different sides of me that I knew my mind likes to combine information. And I like different things and I like to put things together. So I tend to see relationships between subjects and things. And that was manifest when I was in medical school. When I was learning, someone was a senior medical student was saying, "Oh, you're really good at correlating. I'm looking at relationship between things." Some people are really good at rote memorization, right? They memorize all these
Yes.
things and they keep all these hard data very much lined up. To me, that's not as interesting, and my brain doesn't quite function that way. But I love looking at relationships and really seeing how two things can come together and how they're related. I knew that was my strength, that I like multidisciplinary, I like combining things, I see relationships. So I knew if I went into a field, I want that thing to be combining multiple aspects. So one was medicine. Medicine, of course, it's not just science. It combines humanities, right? Sociology and science and technologies. All those things are coming together. And in
Yeah.
Beijing, I actually studied architecture, and that's another kind of
Oh.
multidisciplinary field because you're combining science, engineering, and of course physics and and art. So and sociology, psychology, so all together. So that's what
Wow.
I find the most fulfilling for me, and I think my strength will be to combine different things.
How did you go from being over there to, coming to the United States? Did you want to come? Like, what did an opportunity happen? Like, tell me about it. You wanted to
Yeah,
leave.
at a point, I didn't even know why I wanted to come. I
Okay.
just knew there's something that's really exciting. I wanted to come since I was like 15 or so. But it's interesting. I
Okay.
know you grew up a Mormon and then you had your metamorphosis and kind of rude awakening. And I did
Yeah.
that myself when I was
Okay.
13. I
Mhm.
grew up believing communism, socialism, that's the way to go. That is where society's evolution, led us to. This is a higher form of society, and we have it right. And the capitalists,
Yep.
they got it wrong. And all of a sudden, China was shifting slowly is incorporating all these private enterprises. So everything it said was wrong. Now it's doing. So of course I could see it. But I was
Yeah.
13. When I was going through my own teenage angst. All of a sudden, my religion was yanked away from me. It's like being
Yeah.
told that there's a God, until you were 13, then all of a sudden realize, okay, everyone's acting in a way that apparently there's no God. So it's like, okay, how do I conceptualize my existence, right? How do I go on from
Yeah.
here? Now you have your entire foundation collapsed underneath you. So that's what I was going through. And then at the same time, there's more influence from the West. So it was exciting, right? When I was 13, I think it was the first time I heard pop song. There's actually rhythms. And I was like, oh my God, this feels so good. It feels good to the heart. I want to dance to it.
Mhm.
And then all these glittery things, right? It
Mhm.
looks so glitzy from the West. It's like, oh my God, all these light and technology, how can they be so advanced? I thought we were the most advanced country in the world. Of course, when you open up, that's a problem when you open up your country, right? Probably
Yeah.
that's why North Korea is so afraid to open up. Once people see it, it's like, oh my God, how can we be so behind? But so that's how I felt like, what's going on out there? How are they
Mm.
so ahead of us? what's going on in
Mm.
these countries. So I'm trying to learn about these countries, and somehow I was really good at English, just
Yeah.
naturally. I was always
Wow.
top of the class in English, even if I failed everything else, because I went through my rebellious stage where I did not open up my book, any of the books, for 6 months. So I was like was the bottom of the class for everything except for English. And I found that English, I gravitate toward it. I thought it was a beautiful language. It's a different way of of thinking and really perceiving things and expressing it. And it's a whole different expression, right? You pronounce English higher up in your throat. So instead of lower down with a kind of a heavier, it's more taxing on your throat. And here you're more up. And I think engages different parts of your brain and your emotions. And I enjoyed that. I like that. So the West, the way of thinking in the West was there's something very attractive, and I like how fluid it is in English. I started writing poems in English because I found that I
Wow.
could express my emotions in different ways. So it was liberating. So I wanted, there's something about the West that I wanted to go experience. Um, and when I was 18, I wrote about this in a book.
Yeah.
The Tiananmen Square massacre happened. So the huge
Ah,
incident in
yes.
1989. And I had to make a decision because the change in government policy, whether or not I wanted to try to leave then or wait for almost 10 years to study in China, work in China, and then the government would allow me to leave. So I was at that juncture. I thought long
Mm.
and hard why I wanted to come to America. I overthrew all my theories of why I wanted to come to America. I thought about it for 3 days and nights, and I got so sick of thinking, trying to use logic to decide whether or not why. Oh, I want to experience the world. I want adventure. And I was like, you can experience the world and have adventure in China. Oh, I want challenges.
Yep.
Oh, it's pretty challenging to be in China. So all of a sudden, I was overthrowing everything, all the reasons I gave myself why I wanted to come to America. At the end of the 3 days, I said, forget it. Stop thinking. I don't know why. I just need to go. So, decision made. I
Mm.
want to go. So, that's how I made my decision.
Wow. And you just randomly picked San Francisco, or do you know someone? Do you have family or friends in
Oh boy,
California?
that was yeah. It has to do with how the story
Uh-huh.
unfolded because my first attempt at a visa was chapter one of my book, and that attempt was rejected. So I ended up having
Mm.
to go on an adventure. I call it shooting the dart. Shooting like I'm
Okay.
shooting darts in the dark. I was so upset by the fact that this giant country that I thought that has me, I need to be there and has me, written in the books that I need to be there. They just said no. And I didn't know anybody. I didn't know Americans. I didn't have money. I didn't have connections. And the reason
Yeah.
I was rejected was precisely because I didn't know anybody.
Mm.
So I got really mad. I the anger prompted me to do something that I wouldn't have done. I just took the yellow pages and started
Mhm.
flipping to the section of all the high-end hotels, and I just started calling rooms randomly. So that's how it started. So the rest you have
Wow.
to read the book. I'm not gonna tell you
Okay.
everything.
Okay, which is called Tiger of Beijing, and
Yes,
I definitely am very interested in this. And for those listening, we'll put a link in the show notes for this book, Tiger of Beijing. But okay, so but you eventually
I
got here.
landed in San Francisco, yes.
Okay.
I found a
Um,
way.
someone in the hotel room somehow like invited you over or something.
Well,
I'm
it
very
wasn't a
curious now.
straight line. Life happened,
Yeah.
universe. The reason I did all that was because I heard of the saying that if you really want something, you put your will into the universe,
Mhm.
then the universe will conspire to make that happen for you. So I thought,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to do that. This is what I want. And you make it happen. So
Yeah.
you have to do something, right? You can't just sit there and say, oh, the universe is going to make
Yeah.
it happen.
Just
If you do
manifest it.
something,
Yeah.
but
Just
then the universe works not in a zig line, zigzag. It doesn't
yeah.
give you a straight, you want A to B, and then the universe doesn't say A to B. The universe may lead you all the way to Z, but then Z is eventually will lead you to B. So, but just let the
Okay.
universe do its thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm very curious as to why you wrote the book. Why did you like what was the reasoning behind writing this book, Tiger of Beijing? What compels you to write this or tell your story?
Well, I love novels,
Mhm.
right? Going in, experiencing something and living life. And experienced this story. I mean, it's a real life, like novel like kind of story. And I did meet somebody who said, "Oh my God," because he heard my story. He said, "You have to write it. You have to write a book. You have to. This is incredible." So I wasn't even thinking about that, but because of that, he drilled into my brain. You need to write this. You need to. This is incredible. So I thought, okay, I'll write it. I'll write it as a novel. For a long time, I thought I would just put it out as a novel. And then when I read it, read my draft, I got so sick of reading me talking about someone, like I gave this person's
Yeah.
name June, I started talking about June wants to do this
Okay.
and June feels this way. That way, I just got sick of it. I was like, forget about this June. It's me, I'm
Yeah.
Joy. This is what happened to me. So what if I told a story as if it's me, because it is me.
Mm.
I love real stories. I think it has a lot of power. So I'm just gonna let the world know that happened to me, and big deal. Yeah, talk about, we mentioned, vulnerability. I don't mind being vulnerable because
Yeah.
truth is more powerful than in anything else.
Yeah.
I think by you being in truth, you may be vulnerable in front of your peers somehow. They may perceive that way, but in the universe eyes, in God's eye, you are strong, you are authentic, you're who you are. So you're just
Mm.
expressing who you are. So
Yeah.
no. And besides, we're all going to die one day. Who even care? Who cares? Someone think, "Oh, you're so vulnerable." You don't think you are? Every one of
Yeah.
us have vulnerabilities. Just because I'm willing to express it, that's that doesn't make me more vulnerable than you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. So how was your experience when you first got here then? Where did you go? Like, how did you eventually, become who you are today? Like, how did that happen?
Okay, I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
In my zigzagging,
Yes.
my play with the universe, I ended up meeting an American man. So
Okay.
that's why, and the man lived in San Francisco. That's how, so it's a Caucasian man. So I ended up in San Francisco with him, an
Okay.
incredibly talented person, brilliant. And the problem is that there are um, what's the word, faulty aspects in personality, right?
Okay.
Nowadays people are talking about it's more openly talked about, that people are recognizing narcissistic personality, someone that's extremely controlling and manipulative. So now people are more aware of what that was. When that happened to me, that was 30 years ago. I was 20 years old when I met this person. um, I was very confused, because on
Mm.
one hand, someone can tell you that they love you so much in tears, writing
Yeah.
songs every day for me, right?
Yeah.
That's really amazing. And on the other hand, the person hurts you so badly, and
Mm.
you're hurt, deeply hurt. And then when you try to explain to somebody, "I'm really hurt, this is not good for me. I don't want this," and the person can't hear it. And that was very strange. That
Mm.
was a new experience because I didn't really have much experience with relationships. So
Yeah.
to see that, but then he loves me. He loves me so much. But then it hurts so much. I don't understand, like, what's going on. So it was this craziness until I realized,
Yeah.
wait, there's something really wrong with this person, and I'm not going to be the fixer. That's not my
Yeah.
job in this life. My job is to manifest who I am, because I'm going to waste my entire essence trying to help this person to feel better, to heal. And no, that's not my purpose. He's on his journey. Go find your own healing. So that's when, eventually I left. So I broke free. And
Mm.
it wasn't easy because I was under the difficult circumstance where I thought I would be sent back to China if I left this person.
Oh.
So
Okay.
that was the extra difficulty. And of course, I knew nobody in the US. I thought I would be homeless. I just thought I would just end up sleeping in the cold streets of San Francisco. Yeah, so that was that was the struggle. But the story is relevant because I think it can help so many people.
Yeah.
Many people, I have men, women write to me saying, "Oh my God, I feel like you're talking about my story," because I had been with somebody just like that. So it doesn't even
Wow.
matter if you're men, women. There are very abusive women out there. So
Yeah.
yeah. And it's about pursuing a dream, right? I'm not gonna. So first of all, having some balls, have some audacity to want to leave, knowing it's difficult. That's the same kind of audacity that I'm utilizing here, trying to practice stem cell therapy or even preaching it, right? Educating it. Because people said, how are you talking about it so openly, on YouTube and, on all these social media channels? Aren't you afraid someone is going to try to shut you down? I said, why?
Mm,
I'm speaking the truth. I'm talking about research. I never make claims. I don't exaggerate. I'm sharing information. But it takes some balls because not every doctor is willing to do that. And I even know not every podcaster is willing to talk about it. So,
mm,
I've heard the concern, oh, I think stem cell therapy, this whole field is suppressed. So I don't want to get in trouble for my channel. So it takes some balls to even talk about it, not to mention doing it. Doing it
yeah.
as providing the therapy to patients and having a company that sell products. So I designed a product that's very comprehensive, sell it to doctors and teach all these doctors how to do it. So it takes the ability or the willingness to just go for it, to go into the unknown, and
Yeah.
not be so afraid. What if, what does the FDA say? What is the,
Mm,
what if my malpractice insurance doesn't cover? That should not be the first questions you ask when it comes to whether or not a therapy is incredibly helpful for your patients. The first
yeah.
question is, how much is this going to help my patients? The second
Mm,
question is, what are the risks? And the third is, how can I learn to bring this to people, right? If the first two answers give you a really good foundation, incredibly helpful, minimal risk, I need to bring this to people. So,
yeah.
yeah.
That's beautiful. And I think it says a lot about you and your character and your personality and what you're willing to put out there and how you show up. So I commend you for that, and I think that's very admirable, and I respect you a lot. I can already tell just in the first few minutes of our of our conversation here. And so basically, I do want to talk about, is it called Chara Health? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's my clinic in Los Angeles.
Okay, Chara Health USA, you're, an anti-aging expert, which I want to dive into stem cell therapy. I've had some experience with stem cell therapy in the past, but I'd love to go deeper into the science. But before we get into that, you do a lot of things for a lot of people. You don't just help people with anti-aging. One of the things that I would love to dive into is ketamine therapy. I've had other experts come on talk about psychedelics. And how that's beneficial for some people. I wouldn't really throw ketamine into the same category, psychedelics, but I'm very curious to know from your perspective, how has ketamine been helpful for your clients, and what would you want to say to like someone that has no idea what ketamine is or how it works, but maybe they've heard of it because it is more mainstream, it is legal, it's not illegal. I would love to have you educate my audience on what ketamine therapy is, how it works, and what to expect, and then I'll kind of share my experience with ketamine therapy and
Yeah.
maybe pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah, so ketamine is a synthetic molecule. I think it was discovered in 1960s, and they were trying to make PCP a little bit less problematic. Even though
Mm,
it has a lot of benefits, but it make people pretty crazy. So they wanted
yeah.
something, an anesthetic that actually works well with very minimal side effects. So that's how ketamine was found, and
Mm,
since then is considered one of the safest anesthetics because even for people with cardiovascular concerns, pulmonary issues, if one of the worst nightmares for an anesthesiologist is for people to go into cardiopulmonary collapse,
yeah.
so to speak, when they are under anesthesia. So it's very scary. But ketamine is very safe in that regard. That it doesn't carry that kind of risk. So it's of course other therapies have been used very commonly, and but ketamine is considered one of the safest. It's so safe that is on the WHO's list of essential medications. So it's
Mm,
just a powerful anesthetic and very easy to use. And one of the early discoveries was that not only it does something to knock out the pain, it's doing other things.
mhm.
The probably the first evidence was during Vietnam War. They were giving soldiers either a ketamine pen or a morphine pen. After they're shot
Yeah,
up,
I've read
they can
about
inject
this.
themselves. And the soldiers that injected themselves with ketamine instead of morphine never developed PTSD. So what's going on with
Yeah.
that, right? The morphine pen people had PTSD. So what happened with ketamine? What is it doing to your brain? And
Mm.
then at lower doses, of course, people are getting all these kind of psychedelic type of experience, consciousness,
Yeah.
altered consciousness. And when I first experienced ketamine therapy was with administered by an anesthesiologist who realized the power uh, of ketamine when he was giving people the ketamine as an anesthetic. He said all these people who were addicted to opiates after they finished surgery and then the ketamine wore off, the people that got ketamine as anesthetic didn't ask for more pain meds. That somehow it,
Interesting.
it treated their addiction. So that was really interesting. That got him really intrigued about ketamine. So it does rewiring of the brain. Also people come out happier. Like previous
Mm.
depressed people after coming out of surgery after ketamine as an anesthetic, they're happier. It's like, whoa, what's going on with this anesthetic? So that's kind of the beginning of people discovering that there's something really
Interesting.
special about this anesthetic agent. And then at lower doses, then they found this has a rapid antidepressant effect. Within 40 minutes, it can take a person out of depression. And we don't have
Mm.
that in psychiatry. I was trained in psychiatry as a psychiatrist. Well, there's one thing we do have is ECT, electro, convulsive therapy. So
Mhm.
that's a heavy duty therapy, right? You
It's like shock
nowadays we
therapy.
paralyze, yeah, shock therapy. Nowadays
Yeah.
we paralyze a person and we give them shocks and we only allow blood flow in the big toe so you can observe the big toe twitching. That's when you know the
Mhm.
current is going through, that they're convulsing, but they're only showing the convulsion in the big toe. Everywhere else you're paralyzed. So, but that's a heavy duty, affect your memory. It has side effects, but it's very effective. But that really, outside of ECT, there's no other thing that you can give a person that would take them out of severe depression within, less than an hour. So
Wow.
it's a remarkable agent.
Yeah, yeah, I think, like I said, it's more mainstream than maybe it used to be, and people are learning about it, and now people can use it as a form
Mhm.
of therapy for
Yeah.
depression.
What's
Go
interesting
ahead.
is that they've shown that ketamine can help the neurons establish more synapses and branches. In that sense, helping rewire the brain. It enhances the secretion of brain derived neurotropic factor. So you are really increasing neurogenesis. So, an interesting case
Yeah.
was one of my patients had a stroke before. So, he has some motor impairments and coordination issues. And he didn't even do stem cell therapy with me, but he was
Mm.
coming for regular ketamine therapy. And
Okay.
gradually, he's noticing his golf swings were getting better, his gait was more steady. So he's regaining some functions in his brain.
Yeah. I think that it's important to, put out there the benefits of this medicine, and how it can be used and applied for in these situations. But I also know that recently there's been some abuse of it, and it does come with risks. So maybe if you're open to talking about that as well, like I know the actor Matthew Perry was recently found with an overdose of ketamine, I believe. So there are risks to this stuff, right? And just like there's a difference between recreational use that maybe some people are using it for, or maybe abusing it. What are the risks involved with ketamine as well? It's just so people are informed about, like, hey, this
Mhm.
isn't just something you just go and do and like you're happy, happy, joy, joy after that, and there's like no risks involved.
Yeah, it definitely has risks. You're playing with consciousness.
Yeah.
It can be scary of people who are freaked out because they have
Mm.
never being separate from their ego, right? So there's
Yeah.
the ego is who me, like me is Joy, you're a Jew, this is me, this is my identity, it's me. And all of a sudden it start to loosen. Then you are separating from what you identify as you, which is really not quite you. It's
Scary for some
one
people.
form of what you are right now. So it's separating, and during that process of separation, some people just lashes out. Some people they lash out because they cannot stand that this particular identity is me, that I'm anything different than what I know is me. So it can be frightening. Also, that's not recommended for people who have a tendency to have psychosis. So, for schizophrenics
Mm.
or bipolar disorder patients who had a history of mania, which really is a form of psychosis, then it could really exacerbate. They already
Yeah.
have kind of a tenuous hold on reality. And when you when you take them out, it can, I think they can lose themselves because they already have a
Mhm.
tendency to lose themselves in a different world.
Yeah.
So that's a contraindication, and that's
Yeah.
one of the only contraindications in the history of psychosis. Um, but as far as risks, yeah, if you're not careful about your environment because you're completely out, yeah, if you're
Yeah.
doing ketamine and you're not quite aware of your body sensations and you are in water, uh, yes, you're putting yourself
Yeah.
at risk. You want to be in a safe place. But
Yeah.
if you're doing the treatment under the supervision of a doctor, there's really no risk of addiction because you are not given it on a daily basis. There's a
Yeah.
protocol, there's a regimen. There's really no addiction. Actually, it can treat addiction. But if you start to play with on your own, you start to build up. There's no physiological addiction to ketamine, so you don't depend. You don't get withdrawal symptoms when you're not
Yeah.
taking it. But there's a psychological dependence because you want that feeling of relief
Mm.
and being in a different world. You want it so much because you want to escape this world, because you
Yeah.
feel bad when you're in this world. So you're always like searching and seeking that sensation, then you try to do more and more, and yes, you could end up being dependent on it. I have heard people doing that. So you have to be careful. um,
Yeah.
yeah, there are
Yeah,
some.
that's really interesting. Sorry, go ahead. You finish.
Oh, there's some side effects like nausea, vomiting, and that's one of the
Yeah.
most common, and lacking coordination. Yeah.
I've had that experience where I was under, at a doctor's office and like had the IV drip, and I was like, in the experience, it was very strange, very weird. But then I felt this wave of nauseousness come over me, and I was still aware or awake enough to like know what was happening. And my body was responding, but I couldn't really control what was happening. I was like dry heaving, and they pulled me out of
Oh.
it, and then I was nauseous the rest of the night. But I've had good experiences with smaller doses where like a nasal spray where it's just like mild
Mhm.
and I don't have to be like under like have an IV hooked up and things like that. Um but it's interesting what you said about wanting to escape this reality and using the substance like as an escape. And that's where I think there's a difference between using something like this as a drug or a medicine. And that could be it comes down to intention. And that could go for anything, whether it's junk food, whether it's alcohol, whether it's, other forms of drugs or medicines, opioids or weed or whatever it is. It all can be abused and used as an escape of like, oh, my reality sucks, this thing makes me feel better, and then I'll become dependent on that thing. Even I would say exercise or that, like work, like just kind of like distracting yourself with work so you don't have to feel the uncomfortable emotions of like what you're going through. And we all do that in one way, shape, or form. It just looks different for each person. Some people have healthier habits or healthier escapes, and some of us have less healthier escapes because this is a hard world to navigate and there's tough emotions that we have to deal with. And as humans, we don't like pain, we don't like to be uncomfortable. So we seek comfort through all kinds of means. And, I think anything can be abused or, used as an escape. And it's up to us to determine what's okay. Like, is having some junk food or a drink of alcohol every once in a while, or like a gummy or something to escape reality, a bad thing? I think that's for the person to determine. But if it's becoming a habit and you're addicted to the substance, then I think it can be bad. But I think ketamine is one of those things like we've talked about. It is legal, it is available. I would say for the large majority of the population, it can be beneficial. But it is, a little bit scary if you've never let go of control, if you've
Mhm.
never like surrendered, if you will. And our egos like want to be in control, and to dissolve your ego temporarily in this type of experience can be hard for people. So I'm very curious to know: do you guys coach people through this, or how do you help
Yeah.
people navigate? Like, hey, this is my first ketamine experience,
Yeah.
and you just give it to them, or what?
So we definitely guide them. We
Yeah.
the intention is important. What do you want to get out of the session? What are things that are on your mind that you think you want to work through? so you want to ask about their intention, which is really important. And then while they're experiencing it, a lot of times I like leaving people alone with their experience, but I'm always available, right? We observe them, we make sure that their vitals are good, and if they want help, we're there to talk with them. So, but I want to give them the ability to have a private experience. And oftentimes it was after they've come out of it and they're no longer having this full on kind of psychedelic visual and experience, sensorial experience. Then I asked them, well, share with me what happened, what did you experience, and let's take a look. How is that related to what you're experiencing in life, and what do you think is,
Mm-hmm.
what's trying to instruct you? Because if you because I've definitely experienced quite a bit of ketamine journeys, and sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
feels like I'm led. it's
Mm.
it's me. I described the first time when my friend picked me up after the session. She's like, well, what's it like? I said, well, it's like you going to a Cirque du Soleil show, and but it's made just for you. That whole panorama extravaganza is designed just for you. Not only that,
Mm.
you're front and center seat, and you're on a helicopter, so you are having a great time. But then it's almost, sometimes I feel like my body's like shifting, moving. It's almost like I'm guided, that I'm
Mm.
shown. And what I said was, it was interesting because it was the first time that allowed me to break through from this solid reality, right?
Mm.
Everything 3D, you touch, whether it's water or solid, objects. This is reality. You think this is it. But then that experience took me completely to a different world. And people always say seeing is believing. And I was actually seeing with my own eyes of things that are unimaginable and incredibly beautiful and incredibly complex. Something I don't think my puny little brain can come up with. It's just too complex and too beautiful.
Sure.
I always say, I actually did a presentation on hallucinations at the end of my psychiatry residency because I was fascinated by hallucinations. I was actually married to a mystic who his entire
Oh,
art
really?
collection based on his hallucinations. Yeah, thousands and thousands of pieces of work, all documenting his so-called hallucinations or mystic experience. And I was just fascinated by
Wow.
what's going on in that brain of yours. What are you
Yeah.
seeing? What is this? So I did a basically an end of residency presentation on the subject. What is hallucination? And what could be more than hallucination? What I believe, hallucination is a degradation of reality. So if you're
Mm.
misperceiving things, that it's either losing complexity, losing. So if it's true hallucination, what I we usually describe as an abnormality of perception in your brain, then there's mistakes. So it's aberration and degradation of reality. So there's a physical law, right? Either you gain, you cannot, if degradation, you lose energy, you lose organization. In order to gain higher level of organization and complexity, you need to put energy into it. And the typical deteriorating perception, of something happening, something wrong with the brain, it doesn't, it's only going to produce degraded imagery
Mm.
or perception. But if you're gaining complexity, then there's energy put in. There's a physical law to this. So then who's putting the energy? Where's the energy come from? Why I'm seeing things that's beyond my capability. So there's something
Wow.
that's really profound in these experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think there's definitely a place for some people, and I definitely recommend, obviously doing your research. And it sounds like you guys know what you're doing. And you know how to guide people through this. So I'm grateful that this is available to people, and they, I know you you know we'll talk about anti-aging in a little bit and stem cell therapy, but this sounds like what you guys do is more holistic with, not just, hey, let's make you look good, let's also get at the root cause of maybe where your problems are stemming from, instead of like, oh, well, maybe if you just look younger then you'll be happier. There's, like same thing in my industry with weight loss, and people like, oh, if I just lose this much weight then I'll be happy. And that's not always the case. There's something underlying that needs to be
Yeah.
addressed, and
The
I think
reason I'm
therapies like this are
incorporating
beneficial.
Exactly. The reason I'm incorporating ketamine therapy because I know of the range of human suffering. One
Yep.
aspect is the physical suffering, the other aspect is the mental and
Yeah.
spiritual suffering. So I can give people all the stem cells I want and give them all the peptides and ozone the hell out of them. And they may
Yeah.
still feel really bad and they may still be a jerk to their families and friends, right? They're just super healthy jerk. So how happy is that existence?
I
But
love
what
that.
if I can tweak that? What I can make
Mm,
this person all of a sudden have more empathy, have
yeah.
more joy, have more ability to understand the complexity or the profoundness of this life and not be
Yeah.
so centered on this little ego that I've got to satisfy what I want. I need to show off to the world how great
Yeah.
I am. What I can take the person out of that shell and liberate them. And that's why ketamine can be such a game changer because I'm not working on the hardware of the body anymore. I'm
Yeah.
working on the software of the connectivity of how the program is run because ketamine can actually change your perception of what had happened to you and rewire your brain. So you're establishing a new network. And that's what's happening. I mean, on an imaging, they've shown new
Yeah.
synapses, right? That neurons are establishing new network. So that's a possibility. So if you use talk therapy, you guide people at the same time, and also along with our own understanding, you use that and along with the ability of the neurons to make new connections, now you have a chance to have a fresh new perspective and you can
Yeah.
get past your traumas instead of being stuck in the trauma response, knee-jerk reaction. You are
Yeah.
freeing yourself and you're gaining some level of freedom.
That's beautiful. And I'm so glad that you talked about that because, we see in this world so many, so especially nowadays with what we just went through with, the election season, and there's so much hate and there's so much hurt, and the cycle just continues generation after generation until someone like you or people out there that are like looking to break the cycle and really get at the root of people's traumas and help them heal so that, because hurt people, but healed people will heal people. And as we,
Mhm.
work on ourselves, we pay it forward by wanting other people to feel this way too, instead of just continuing the cycle of hurt. So super grateful that you do that. And I think it's really awesome to know that places like that exist and that people like you exist. So thank you. I do want to shift gears and talk about stem cell therapy because I could talk about psychedelics all day long. People have heard my podcast before, and I talk about healing and why it's so important for a weight loss journey. But I do want to talk about stem cell therapy. And one of the first questions that I have, and recently there's been a lot of like celebrities or athletes that have gone overseas to get stem cell therapy. What's the difference between stem cells here in the United States versus overseas, and why do some like high-end athletes go overseas to get stem cell therapy versus here? Maybe you can talk about myths about the stem cell therapy and the differences.
Okay, you can be the most brilliant athlete. Doesn't mean that you have the best information of what the science is showing and where things
Sure.
are at. So you're still gaining some information, bits and pieces from people you know, people you think are smart, but you may not have the full picture. So this is
Okay.
why somebody as brilliant as Joe Rogan and as Tony Robbins, and I hear things that they say that are not fully truthful. They weren't
What?
trying
Are you
to lie.
sure?
They just didn't know. They just didn't have the full information, right? So,
Sure.
I mean, I love those guys,
Let's
but
get you on
again,
Joe Rogan next.
yeah,
Yeah.
because a lot of things need to be corrected.
Sure.
I'm a stickler for truth, right? So if I'm standing here, I want to give you truth. So
Okay.
the truth is that there is a myth about that you need to go overseas to get stem cell treatment, and
Okay.
that has some historical reasons. Partially because George W. Bush banned embryonic stem cell
Yep.
research. Uh, but then that was embryonic stem cells, and no one is using embryonic stem cells for therapy in the U.S. So that involves destroying an embryo. So that's where it came from. Oh, it's forbidden. It's really the federal funding for embryonic stem cell research was forbidden. So that was like a little fragment of truth, right? It's not the full truth, but people were holding on. Oh, it's illegal. Yeah, it's illegal to do a particular thing, but not for the whole stem cell field. And then there comes the FDA, right? So the FDA wants to regulate a lot of things, including something natural like stem cells. So there's an approach to medicine. You either use synthetic ingredients and then
Yep.
regulate that as drug. Or when you use nature, you can't really patent nature. And that is,
Yep.
it's, that doesn't quite fall into the drug category anymore, but they want
Mm.
to regulate it as a drug. They want to control this industry. So when you are extracting cells and you start to give it to people, why is it different from getting one person's blood and then infusing it to the next? Do you need FDA indication for that? No, it's a practice
Mm.
of medicine. If somebody's liver is really bad and a doctor transplant one person's liver, good liver, into another person's body, does that require FDA approval? No, because it's a practice of medicine. The FDA has nothing to do with it, with human tissue transplantation, because that's not a drug. So when we use stem cells, we're using nature's gift, right? Something completely natural and putting in the body. So the FDA really wanted to regulate it. And then it finally came up. I agree. There are some unscrupulous people who are touting stem cells can treat everything and do all this stuff. And they shouldn't be allowed to just make these blanket statements that's not based on science and that's raking in millions, right, from people. So that I don't think is right either. But
Okay.
that happens to every industry, right? There are
Yeah.
crooks out there trying to make a buck from anything. So, but stem cells, the FDA says finally in 2017 says, okay, if you want to use stem cells for therapy, if you do not change the cells in any way, because before that there was no rules, like it's the Wild West. No one knows
Yeah.
what there is. No one said it's legal or illegal. There's no law. There's nothing on the paper. So people are doing whatever they wanted. And then 2017 FDA said, if you want to use the cells, um, but the cells have not been altered in any way. The way you alter it is by using chemicals to treat it, using enzymes to process it, or expand them in a culture medium to huge numbers. Any of these things that you're doing are altering the cells, and that means that you're making a drug. So that's the leap of logic, right, from the FDA. It says,
Okay.
then you're creating a drug. However, if you do not do all those things, we're going to let you do it. You do whatever you want, as long as the cells are performing the same function of what it was doing in the body before it was transplanted. So whatever it
Mm.
was doing in the body of the donor is what's doing what it's doing in the body of a recipient. Then you are practicing medicine. We're going to wipe our hands off. Then your action is governed by your medical board, and then it's not part of the FDA. The FDA, we only want to make sure that there's some sterility and traceability of the tissue. And that's
Okay.
that's the only thing. So if something goes wrong, right? Let's say one lab produced 100 vials of something, and then one person
Yeah.
had a bad reaction. We have to be able to trace back to see, okay, which batch is it, what's going on, who's the donor, and let's go back and trace. So traceability, that's the only thing they wanted, is
Okay.
traceability. So when you do fulfill all these criteria, which is what we do in our clinic, and all these doctors I'm teaching, that we are performing a medical treatment. It's not a drug that we're using. We're transplanting human tissue. That's why it's legal. But if you start to do any of those things to manipulate the cells, then the FDA says you're creating a drug. You can give it to people, but you better give it to people under a clinical study. So you need to
Mm.
apply for a investigational new drug um, application. So that's the IND study. So you need to apply for that. And that has multiple
Wow.
steps. It's very costly, time consuming, and energy draining. So that's why all these companies would just move overseas. Hey, Panama doesn't
Mm.
have these regulations, or the Colombia doesn't have it. So let's set up a shop. Let's expand these cells, grow them to huge numbers, and then we'll give it to people. Because guess what? All the early research were showing results based on using expanded cells, because they thought that we need a lot of numbers. So if we just have, whatever, 100,000 cells, probably it's not going to do much. Let's expand them to 10 million, 100 million
Wow.
cells. And then we can create, then we'll do that, use that in research. So because these cells are so easily multiplied, the
Yeah.
problem is that when you multiply them, they start to change. Even one
Mm.
generation changes.
Hmm.
It changes cells. So it changes their expression of the genetic code. It changes how they express surface markers, which can cause them to express the marker of the donor, right, which can cause rejection in the recipient. And also in the expansion process, while the cells are growing in the culture in this foreign environment, that's some kind of incubator in the fluid that the scientists think is perfect for the cells. It's a stressful environment. It's not the human body. So the cells will start to secrete inflammatory molecules, and those can also cause some problems. And this is why, even though it can produce good results, well, so can the cells that have not been expanded. So that's the two camps,
Yeah.
right? In the US, mostly it's the camp that have used cells that have not been expanded because we can legally use that and we're producing incredible results. And on the other hand, is all these overseas clinics who are using expanded cells and they're producing great results too. I don't want to knock that, but they're also producing more side effects. And that is also
Oh,
very evident. And this is why Tony Robbins was saying, "Oh yeah, I got great healing from my shoulder injury using stem cells. Oh, I got really sick for for a bit. I think a few days or at least one
yeah.
day. He got he said, oh, that was a cytokine storm. I felt really crummy, but that's part of it. This is part of the healing, and it's
Mm,
not because I have never ever seen a cytokine storm in my clinic or in anybody that have used the product that we're sending to doctors. So you don't have to look for or think that you need so many cells and that,
yeah.
that you need some kind of side effect in order to know the cells are actually working. That's such a it's not correct because we're seeing incredible results. This is so we're accumulating data on this side, on the US side, because
Yeah.
partially from necessity that we can't use expanded cells without going through all the complications, but just using these cells because they work so well already. And that's why we're accumulating evidence that this works really nicely. And I've seen that in patients, like the same patient who had gone to
Okay.
overseas clinics, got all these expanded cells, huge number of cells, and then they got certain response. And they come to my clinic and doing what we do here and got a much better response. So this is from, and
Okay.
I've seen that multiple times. So that's from the one person, right? That there's a lot of control within one person. It's never going to be perfect, identical situations,
Sure.
but that's pretty, it's pretty good evidence.
Yeah, I saw a video on your social media recently about using stem cell therapy for weight loss, and you had a client that had really good results. What are the main applications for stem cell therapy? Like, who's a good candidate? What is it you actually use for, and what are the best results you're seeing? Is it for shoulder injuries? Is it for anti-aging? Is it for weight
Goodness.
loss? Like, what are the main applications for stem cell therapy?
Oh gosh. One for anti-aging, there's nothing like stem cells. I don't care what you say. There's nothing
Like
like
in the face,
putting
or how do
into
you?
no in through the IV route, injecting into the
Oh,
veins.
okay.
So that goes
Wow.
throughout your whole body, including your immune system, right? Permeates all your immune organs, and that will immune rejuvenation is crucial for your full body's rejuvenation. Some people
Okay.
think that immune senescence is really what's triggering our own aging decline. But um, for anti-aging, definitely, there's nothing like giving your body the blueprints for healing, right? The early blueprints and to promote this healing. So that for regeneration is amazing. But 90% of patients who come to see me, 85 to 90% of the people come to see me because they are dealing with a serious and chronic condition that they just can't get get things to a place where they're happy, right? They're either hanging on with medications or they're suffering and nothing was helping. So this include people, I mean, really from head to toe. We've got people from, of course, musculoskeletal problems. That's like
Yeah.
the bread and butter of stem cell therapy. That's the easier part.
Sure.
We can inject into the joint and soft tissue. So okay, so that's important. But that's only one fraction of what we're dealing with in the clinic. We deal with all kinds of brain conditions. So things that traditional medicine have nothing to offer, right? Parkinson's, well, there's one, two medications, sort of, there's side effects, and
Yeah.
still, it may slow the progression a little bit, but not reversal. So, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, traumatic brain injury, post-stroke victims,
Mhm.
ALS. So a lot of the brain autism, another brain related, it's really
Yeah.
systemic, but brain is a big part that's affected. And then different organs, heart, so congestive heart failure, coronary artery disease, just atherosclerosis, and people who are dealing with lung conditions, lung injuries,
Mm.
COPD, the kidneys, chronic kidney failure, liver cirrhosis, or we just recently saw an incredible person, a case with progressive cholangitis, which is the inflammation of the bile duct, and the person's on the liver transplant list. We give the person two treatment, and he's already off the liver transplant list because his liver has improved so
Wow.
much. And this condition, there's absolutely nothing that can help. That is a condition that basically your doctor said, sorry, that's just wait for a liver transplant. So incredible things. Liver, I've seen improving productivity in women. Of course, we can inject into the penis, vagina to help with sexual function, and then and autoimmune. So vast
Wow.
amount of autoimmune number of conditions, right? Rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, psoriasis, sarcoidosis, thyroiditis, all these autoimmune conditions. There's good
Yeah.
evidence that stem cells can help. So we have people who are coming in for everything. And we even have seen people, there are cases I never overpromise patients because I'm always
Sure.
cautious because what if it doesn't work, right? 'Cause there's
Yeah.
always possibility it doesn't work. So I'm always cautiously optimistic. But some cases I'm just cautious. I'm not even optimistic. For example,
Sure.
we had a patient who had a brain surgery when he was 9 years old. He had to do a brain surgery, which damaged one of his optic nerves, causing blindness. So he's blind in one eye. We did one
Okay.
treatment, and a 3 month follow up. This just happened recently. He said he's starting to see in that one eye. This is 44 years ago. 44
Wow.
years of blindness. And now he's starting to see. I mean, it almost brings tears to my eyes. I mean, imagine. So
Yeah.
now he wants to come to another treatment. So that's something. If I had done a consultation with him, and he told me that's what's happening with that one eye, I would say I don't think that's going to help him. It's been 44 years, so I wouldn't even tell him that I'm more optimistic. Because I
Yeah.
wouldn't be. But then the cells often surprise me, and it's beautiful. Um, so the people with with hearing issues, we have seen people
Mm.
improve, diabetes, blood sugar improving. It's just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have I know some people in the industry who do stem cell therapy like once a year they go in for a full body kind of like stem cell therapy from their head all the way down to their toes, and they kind of do a full body thing. Do you feel like stem cell therapy is only right now because it is? I remember it being pretty expensive back in the day. I don't know if it's cheaper now versus 10 years ago, but do you see stem cell therapy becoming more and more affordable for your average person, or is this just for like the high end celebrities, athletes that have access to this?
um, Personally, in my clinic, I've seen all kinds of populations.
Okay.
Yes, a lot of times people who have some resources, you don't have to be rich. You have some
Hmm.
resources and you recognize the value of what the therapy can bring you. And some
Yeah.
people don't have much resources. I have a teacher who realized that there's nothing that can help them. So how
Mm.
much is their life worth? So if living a life of misery, if that's the only other option, would you get some savings together and get this treatment
Yeah.
and actually shift your life? So there are people who are willing to do that. And of course, at my clinic we actually have a program that we help people who can show that financially they have lower income, they don't have as much resources. We give them significant discounts to make it more available. But the the range yeah, so sometimes it can be people who don't have a lot of resources, but they may realize that over the long run I'm actually saving money by
Yeah.
devoting and optimizing my body, right? Devoting resource to optimize it, so then I will have much longer and healthier life, longer periods of good life. So
Yeah.
yeah. But to answer your question, yes, it's not cheap, right? So it's in the thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. I would say usually,
Yeah.
I would say the range of cell therapy right now, it's between 5,000 to 50,000. That's a big range, but
Yep.
that's where things are at. Just because you go overseas doesn't mean it's cheaper, as I've been told multiple times by my patients who are looking at
Yeah.
all the different options. And they say, well, coming to you is actually cheaper. So, well, do I think it's going to be less expensive? Yes, especially
Yeah.
if the regulations, if the government is not suppressing it, if it's making it easier, if the medical system is allowing it, is recognizing it, as a potential lifesaver and and enhancement of our health as a foundational piece. So yes, will insurance company be involved at one point? Very well could be,
Yeah.
because it's going to save them so much money over the long run. The people are just going to keep paying premium without spending the money on hospitalizations and big expensive drugs. So will they catch up? Yes. Right now they have the incentive to work with big pharma because there's back and forth between them. They're making great money and people are getting poor and getting sick longer. And so they just keep donating money to this big apparatus that's made of big pharma and the big insurance companies. So, but things may be woken up, with the
Yeah.
whole change. We'll see what happens in the next few years. Will we have more openness to therapies like that? Will the insurance companies start to embrace? If they come
Yeah.
in, they start to purchase in bulk. Let's get everybody some stem cells, and we all live healthier and and disease free. Because let me give you the statistics. So I learned this from
Sure.
Ryan Smith, who has the True Age diagnostic, and he's the founder. They test biological age. So I did a podcast with him. He was saying, if we can reverse the biological age by 7 years, let's say somebody's 50 and we reverse it to 43,
Sure.
if we do that for the entire population, the rate of chronic disease is going to be cut by half. You're
Okay.
just going to live a healthier life, right? You
Yep.
doesn't mean that you don't die, but you're going to have, instead of being sick at 50 and declining, maybe you just stay well until you're 75 and then you decline. So that means the number of chronic illness that's existing, that's going to the doctor's office to see doctors for these chronic conditions, that's cut by half. So
Yeah.
imagine how much money that's saving people. So we have a chance, I believe, with regular stem cell therapy, we can reverse the age by 15 to 20 years. I don't think
Yeah.
that's far-fetched at all, because in animal studies it's consistent. Regular IV stem cell infusion of younger cells extend the lifespan of animals by 30%. And not just
Yeah.
lifespan, it's their health span. They look way better, they act better, they move better, they think better. So we know it works. And when we dissect their muscles and their brain, we actually see everything, all the markers, neurotransmitters, growth
Mhm.
factors, senescent markers, everything was reverted to the younger state. So we have physical evidence that the cells were actually younger. So if we can change our rhetoric, or
Yeah.
our understanding of what these can do, and then big entities come in and make this more available, and then
Yeah.
then it's going to be, I always say it's going to be as common as antibiotics. It's going to be no big
Sure.
deal. One day it's going to be no big deal. Oh, one time Dr. Collin was talking about these fancy stem cells, and then I was like, what's so great? You're like, big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's
Well, we'll
talking about
see.
it as if it's, yeah, it really is not a big deal. It's
Yeah.
just, it's intelligence, it's nature's intelligence that we're tapping
Yeah.
into.
Well, we'll see. Obviously, you're a walking testimonial of the product, and whatever you're doing is obviously working. So keep doing what you're doing, Dr. Joy. I appreciate you. Um, but yeah, I appreciate you coming on the podcast today and talking about all these things. I know we could talk about stem cells forever. I might have to have you back on. Actually, talking about some other things too, because I didn't even have a chance to get into peptide therapy, which is very popular nowadays as well. So I know you
Yes.
you cover a whole range of things that help people, and that's where I want to help educate people about these things that exist out there, because some people just don't know that these things exist or they're available. So before we end though, where can we send people to? I want to talk about one, your personal brand, but then also Chara Health, and where that's at, where people, if people are in California, you're in California, right?
Yeah, I'm in Los
Yeah.
Angeles. So it's very easy. If you want to see everything I'm doing, just go to drjoykong.com. It will have everything that I got myself into. That includes my clinic, the stem cell company, the academy I founded, my stem cell cream, which is 100%
Mm.
natural cream, is phenomenal. And
Yeah, I
then,
didn't get a chance to ask you about that.
yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I'm willing to put on my face.
Okay.
I
I'm very
refuse.
curious about this now. I
And
want to know
then,
about your whole routine at some point. Maybe we'll have to do a
oh
whole
yeah,
podcast
we can talk
on
about
just your
that.
whole routine.
And then it also talks about my book.
Okay.
My memoir we talked about, Tiger of Beijing. And of course, I also have a podcast. So everything is on there. And then if they want to, of course, they can find me on
Uh-oh.
podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and just look for Dr. Joy Kong. I'll be right there. And they
Okay.
can also get on my YouTube channel, which have so many videos, and I keep producing new ones every week to make sure I'm
Nice.
covering all these different aspects of cell therapy. But I also invite wonderful guests. Actually, I would love to invite you, Drew, onto my podcast because I think we will have so much to share, and it's going to be so much fun. Yeah, so that's where people can find me. YouTube, go just look up Joy Kong MD. That's yeah, lots of info there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Joy Kong. You're awesome. I appreciate you and looking forward to connecting with you soon.
Okay, thank you so
All
much, Drew.
right.
It's been a lot
Have
of
a good
fun.
one.
You too.
Thanks.